Did Mohammed exist? Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go back to the hospital tomorrow. It's very clear that I need to do that. I would have said yes a year ago, 6 months ago. I even uh, back in 2002, 2003, I was going to a church for the first time ever. It's a very charismatic type of Anglican church called the Church of the Resurrection. Didn't even have a building, but people were all there, very nice. But they had a very type of very old Anglican, Anglo-Catholic type of service, but it was very charismatic, and there were people speaking in tongues, and it was very strange. There was a girl there named Shagufa. Uh, they also called her Zena, because everybody was like, that's kind of like Goofy. This, and she could very sexy little Afghani girl. Uh, she wore some interesting choices of clothing to church. As far as I know, she still goes there. But I remember arguing with her because I was Sunni and she was Shia, and it didn't matter that we had left Islam. We would we were arguing. She's like, no, and about Ali and Abu Bakr, and I'm like, no, they're, and we would be bickering back. And there's, well, this didn't happen a lot. This happened once, and then we were kind of like, you know, we were standing outside, and just people are like, what are they arguing about? And I'm like, no, just going off. And I actually still defend Sunni point of view. I'd be like, the Shia, they're like the Christians, and saying they're like the Christians as an insult. Uh, which I could get into that and explain about that for a while. But I'd be like, sure, they're not Muslims. They're, whatever. It doesn't matter. They're like it's ridiculous. And just constantly argue about, you know, Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Uthman, Ali. Be like, oh, how could Ali have hated Abu Bakr? He came after, he was in succession. All these people were part of the Sahaba, but the Shias didn't have that concept. They didn't. They totally disagreed with all that. Um, and even recently, investigating Shiaism, I surprised to hear what they had to say about Aisha. Now, I always had problems with Khalid bin Walid. I mean, I read him and I'm like, this guy, he's just a bloodthirsty maniac. He just wants to kill. He was perfectly happy killing for the pagans, and liked killing. And then even after he converted to Islam, he would lick the edge of his sword and be like, the blood of the Byzantines is sweet. Well, there wasn't blood on there, but he, do weird shit like that. And he went out to meet somebody in battle, and they were about to just fight, those two, and before the guy would even he drew his sword and just chopped off the guy's head, and that's shown as like, oh, see, he was that much better. It's like, well, in warfare, no, you wait till both swords are drawn. It's a duel. And I even knew that history and everything, but looking at the Shia accounts, uh, yeah, they're more reliable. I mean, all the hadith and everything came 300 years after the death of Muhammad. I keep it's instinctual to say the Prophet Muhammad, but anyways, digress. Stumbling across an author that actually said, because it said I used to believe in Islam, or I used to believe in Muhammad, and I looked at it and I'm like, what, this guy did. And then what he said was he used to believe he was an actual person. Now he's not. Well, I had found out years ago that Muhammad isn't, and well, even in the Quran it says Ahmed, and I'm like, okay, that's the name, and I 20 years ago I'd be like, well, no, it's Ahmed, it's not Muhammad. Muhammad, it's the praised one, but Ahmed is the important part of it, So there was that, but just a few years ago I learned that that wasn't his name. His name was Qatham, because his mom gave birth to him 4 years after his father died, and that's considered one of the things. Oh, he was in the womb for 4 years, and well, no. Qatham was a bad name, and he took at around the age of 30 the name Muhammad, praised one, or things that are lovely, however you want to translate it. There is a German scholar, come to find out after I watched this video about this one author talking about it, that he's a German scholar of Islam. He converted to Islam. He won't shake hands with women. He's devout, whatever. He says, well, I have to come to the conclusion that no, Muhammad was not a real person. So even if he was, but me knowing even if he was, he started out as Cutham. There's been changed. We have a lot of changing of his biography. We have a lot of disagreement, contention between it. But it's strange to think about that. Um, the Muslim armies poured out of the desert in 632, and for 60 years after that, neither them or their opponents, with everything they wrote, with all the coins stamped, with everything that was made, for 60 years, there is not one mention of Muhammad, Islam, or the Quran. Now, later on, you would have St. John Damascus, the Damascene, talk about the false prophet of Islam, and that this is how ridiculous is it that a prophet of God spreads the word of God by the sword and the chariot. That's one of his quotes. Uh, but it's very strange that we absolutely see that the political and warlike aspects of Islam existed before the consolidation of the religion. And I had also years ago had been looking into the compilation of the Quran and came to believe that it was 200 years after they say it was compiled, and it was not compiled in Arabia. It was compiled in Baghdad, and you can see the differences between the codices, and that there's two extra surahs that a lot of people don't like or don't want to know about, because there's either 116 or 114. Everybody knows about the surah that was eaten by a goat that was written on a leaf and it was lost, but not many people know about. It's talked about in Sahih al-Bukhari about a surah that is 3 times longer than al-Baqarah that is gone. Al-Baqarah is the longest surah of the Quran. It's right after al-Fatiha at the beginning. It depends on which type of Quran you have, which way it opens. Um, Moving on from that, Anatoly Fomenko, who's a kind of a crazy guy, uh, thinks history is only 900 years old. Is BS. He did make some good points, and you think about it, thinking about it, Islam was a faction of Christianity that turned violent, a faction of Nestorian Christianity blended with paganism that turned violent. And it also blended with this form of hardcore Orthodox Judaism that was in southern Iraq and southern Arabia. These converting tribes, basically, based on this central pilgrimage, ancient pilgrimage site of the Hindus known as the Kaaba. We know the Kaaba has been rebuilt, was rebuilt 400 to 500 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, because the Karamatins came, destroyed it, tore down Blackstone, used the Blackstone for a toilet, uh, and then when it was rebuilt much differently than it was originally. Uh, Even the many words in the Quran in Arabic they don't make sense, but in Aramaic they make perfect sense. That's why people will say things like, "Well, it's not virgins, it's raisins," or these verses or that, or this thing actually means like kaf, that actually means Jesus Christ, Son of God, and a lot of these things that they don't know. Uh, the Quran is a compilation of medieval Christian and Jewish pagan sources, and for some, actually Hindu. Shiva cult was actually a big influence on it. Uh, Researching more and more into this, because when I get into something, I go nuts looking into it. And I will make a video that's more cohesive, more coherent, longer. But in short, no, there was no such person as Muhammad. Uh, Real personality, but as an actual human being, no. Khatam may have existed, but the sources are completely unreliable, because while the Muslims criticize the Christians for their accounts coming 30 to 40 years after the death of Jesus, uh, or ascension, essentially, the Muslims, it's 400 to 500 years. And isn't it funny? and the Shia thing really ties into this because uh, the Muslims were assassinating and killing each other. The first four of the true caliphs were assassinated by other Muslims. Some accounts say, "Oh no, they weren't." Muhammad was even poisoned to death uh, by Muslims. The Muslims were killing each other, couldn't stand each other because it started off as political, as a not well, I don't want to say political in modern sense, but a conquest, and the religion was an afterthought to congeal it. And no isnad chains are reliable. Sorry. Peace to you. I will speak more on this. She wore some interesting choices of clothing to church. As far as I know, she still goes there. But I remember arguing with her because I was Sunni and she was Shia, and it didn't matter that we had left Islam. We would we were arguing. She's like, no, and about Ali and Abu Bakr, and I'm like, no, they're and we would be bickering back. And there's, well, this didn't happen a lot. This happened once, and then we were kind of like, you know, we were standing outside, and just people are like, what are they arguing about? And I'm like, no, just going off. And I actually still defend Sunni. I even uh, back in 2002, 2003, I was going to a church for the first time ever. It's a very charismatic type of Anglican church called the Church of the Church of the Resurrection. Didn't even have a building, but people were all there, very nice. But they had a very type of very. Did Mohammed exist? Oh yeah, I'm gonna go back to the hospital tomorrow. It's very clear that I need to do that. I would have said yes a year ago, 6 months ago. Old Anglican, Anglo-Catholic type of service, but it was very charismatic, and there were people speaking in tongues, and it was very strange. There was a girl there named Shagufa. Uh, they also called her Zena, because everybody was like, that's kind of like Goofy. This, and she could very sexy little Afghani girl. Uh,